Hi, everybody, and welcome back to CEP Week Tuesday. I'm Sally Spiro with No Kid Hungry, and today we're going to be going over CEP Financials. So let's get started. Yesterday, I promised that I would tell you the calculation for doing the ISP, and I call that we unfortunately have to do math if you're math phobic. So let's start at the top in the left-hand corner. The total number of identified students divided by total enrollment multiplied by 100 determines the total identified student percentage. Isn't that just the way USDA always talks to us? They give us the information, but it's a little hard to translate into actual English, maybe. So let me show you how that works. If you had 500 kids enrolled in a school and you had 300 that you had identified as directly certified for free, and you divided 300 into 500, you would get 60%. The next step is you multiply 60 times 1.6 to get the total free reimbursement percentage. So 60 times 1.6 equals 96%. Your meals are claimed as either free or full price. There's no reduced in CEP. So at that school that had 500 students, if 400 of them showed up for lunch, you would be reimbursed for 384 free meals and 16 paid meals. So in other words, you would get quite a bit of money for the free meals and you would get hardly anything for the paid meals. But hopefully this is all going to work out because of a low amount of paid meals. And when you factor in other things that we're going to go through, you'll see how that can work. All right, the budget. Well, there is nothing that will drive the school food service director into his or her office faster than having to work on the budget, shut the door, say don't open it unless there is a fire or blood. I'm taking the phone off the hook, leave me alone. So it's our job, we got to do it. Let's see what we can come up with. So if you have 62.5 and you multiply that times 1.6, you're going to get the number 100. So if you have sites that are 62.5% ISP, you're going to get 100% free. And that's really great. You can stop doing math for a while. But probably you're going to find out that you have some sites that are between 40% and 60%. So what to do about those? Here's some things to think about in terms of your revenue. Remember that when you increase participation, you're always increasing your total revenue. And remember that you will not have any uncollectible accounts, which is a drain against your revenue. Now, I know the general fund picks up the bill, but do you really like being the school food service director who submits their budget with a line item that says $80,000 reimbursed from the general fund? Well, it's not going to make you the most popular school food service director in the office, let's just say. So if we can avoid that, that's always good as well. Now, what kind of impact did we expect on our expenses? Well, a big expense is food cost. And frankly, food cost is not really going to be impacted very much by whether you're on CEP or not. So you can just project that out as you would with any other program. Labor cost is, however, where you are likely to see some savings. First of all, administrative labor. Well, I know you're there all the time, but under the traditional program, a lot of times you need to bring in people to help process the applications. And then every day you have to spend administrative time tracking all that information and preparing bank deposits, things like that. So you can probably see some administrative labor savings times there. Food preparation labor, again, probably not going to have much impact from CEP. That's controlled through other ways, which is probably a whole nother webinar on menu, equipment, productivity, and so on. But you are really going to also see some savings in serving line labor because you are not going to have to be processing all the accounts. So let's say that you've devoted 10 hours of labor at a school for serving time. You have 4 lines open and each line has somebody working 2.5 hours. So that's a total of your 10 hours. If they don't have to process the meal payments and help people find their PIN numbers and so on, you can open up a 5th line and the people will only need to have 2 hours to run that line. So now you have increased your point of service without increasing your labor. So you're getting in more revenue and spending the same amount of money to get it. Another thing is your fixed costs. These are the costs that's the same no matter what happens. And there's a couple of these in every budget. A big one is probably employee benefits. So let's say that your budget was $100,000 of revenue, and every month you paid $1,000 in employee benefits, and you paid it in months where you served for 5 days or 10 days or 29 days. It always costs $1,000. So if you had $100,000 and $1,000 in benefits, that is 1% of your budget. However, if you can increase your budget to $200,000, you will still be paying $100,000 in employee benefits, but it is now 0.5% of your fixed cost. So it helps spread that burden around. Utilities is another one where it's mostly fixed cost. So that's one of the things that can really help you when you're making your budget for CEP, is how it's going to impact these different cost centers. So here are some questions that you want to ask yourself as you're working on your budget. Do you think that CEP will increase, decrease, or have no effect on your participation? That will help you project your revenue. How much will I save by not having to maintain meal processing and student account management systems? That's all those PIN pads and all the time spent processing all that stuff. If I have increased participation, at what point will I have to increase labor? Well, you know, if your labor goal is, say, 25 meals per labor hour, it's probably somewhat flexible. It's probably more like 24 to 27. So at what point would you have to have so much participation, you'd have to increase it? You want to ask yourself that question. So if you say, well, I think it's going to increase it by 5%, you probably are not going to have to increase your labor. If you think it's going to increase it by 80%, then probably you are. But as you're working with your figures, you want to kind of keep that in mind. Will the budget percentage of fixed costs be reduced? We talked about that in the previous slide. Some of the things that you can use to help you, as much as you can be helped behind that closed door, is the No Kid Hungry CEP calculator. You can put the data in there and it will show you the impact on your revenue. Meals Count also has a great tool for doing grouping, which we're going to talk about in a couple of days. It's not on the slide, but don't forget your classes in finance, how to do a break-even analysis. That's always useful. There's lots of calculators out there. FRAC has a lot of information about different calculations to calculate your revenue. So you might want to check those out as well. It's really important that you actually do this work because you don't want to be guessing. You don't want to say, well, you know, in Susie's district, they save 5%. So maybe I'm going to save 5% too. You really want to have those answers. And you're going to want to have this information before you approach the district decision makers. You don't want to go in there and have them have questions that you don't appear to have answers to because you haven't done this work. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Again, we have some great resources. The calculator, Successes for Finding Success with CEP, talks about sites that are less than 62.5%, and other financial considerations, especially for your school business official. So they're all online. You can check them out. We hope you'll keep in touch with us and sign up for our newsletter and check out our best practices at nokidhungry.org. Tomorrow, we're tackling the topic CEP and CBO. Can they be happy together? Let's find out. Thanks for coming today, and I'll see you tomorrow.